Yo, what's up everybody, it's me, That Weep here, back with part 8 for What If Asta was Meliodas' son. Now, if you guys have not watched the previous parts or are new to the channel, make sure to go up here to the top upper right hand corner. There you'll see a playlist waiting for you that has all of the previous parts so you can catch up and then come back to this video. Before you do that though, if you do like this video after you're done watching it and other things like that, make sure to hit the like button because it really helps the channel out with the algorithm, as well as subscribe to my channel for more videos on anime content and what ifs from me. Anyway, let's just get into this part for What If Asta was Meliodas' son. This is a tale of ancient times, an era before the human and non-human worlds were forever divided. After many, many battles, the 7 deadly sins, an order of legendary knights, would be divided. Dragon Sin Meliodas and Princess Elizabeth would have a son in a faraway land, and his name was Asta. Asta would eventually attain his own grimoire and start his journey to become the Wizard King. Valtos, Licht would say. Immediately, Valtos would use his teleportation magic, where he creates those dark portals and can shoot curse-like beams, as he would then attack Asta, giving Licht enough time to charge some light attacks, as he begins sending blasts of incredibly fast beams of light towards Asta. With both Licht and Valtos tag teaming against Asta, it wouldn't even be a fair fight. That is, for them. As Asta would then use full counter on all the attacks coming at him, as they were moving faster than a normal human could see. But Asta is no human. Asta's demonic and angelic eye could see everything, as they would see the beams of magic coming towards them slowly, almost as if time was slowing down. As Asta would then pull up his Lost Vein blade, slashing at the beam of light, as well as all the other attacks flying at him. Full counter. Suddenly the beams would then get sent flying back, as the magic would counter the magic, sending them flying back towards Licht and Valtos, who would have to use magic again to block or counter, or they'd even take a hit, with Valtos getting hit by one of Licht's light attacks. Licht would be shocked, asking, Valtos, are you alright? Valtos would grimace, saying he's fine, and then this would be when Licht would use his light magic to heal his leg. You think you can heal right in front of me, Asta would say? Too slow. Licht would suddenly turn around just in time, as Asta would have retrieved another blade from his 5-leaf grimoire, this time the Demon Dweller's sword. Asta would go for a piercing attack, covering with anti-magic, and then covering over the anti-magic with dark magic, using 1,000 divine cuts, as a dark hellfire flame would cover the anti-magic, as he prods, spearing it directly towards Licht's chest. Valtos would jump in front of the way using his teleportation magic, blocking the blow and sending it flying to the side of the cave, causing the entire area to begin to rumble, as the dark flames would begin to spread. Licht would create whips of light as he begins attacking Asta, aiming towards his dark side, hoping to counter his dark magic. But what he doesn't understand is that Asta is no ordinary dark magic user. He has dark, demonic magic, as his power is easily able to overwhelm Licht. For some reference on how powerful Asta is currently at this moment, if you guys remember how strong Meliodas was against Escanor, and Asta's power is pretty close to that amount of strength. So Asta's assault mode, which is imperfected and hasn't been trained, is already almost as strong as Meliodas' full power assault mode when he's fighting Escanor back during the 7 deadly sins. Anyway, back to the main fight itself, Licht would be getting worried, knowing that even though he is loved by the mana, his seemingly infinite amounts of magic would still seem to be coming up short against Asta's pure power. Asta's physical speed and strength alone would be enough to overwhelm Licht. However, Asta's newfound power would be a double-edged sword. As you remember how Meliodas, one of the most powerful demon princes, who had been one of the generals of the Demon King for a long period of time, would lose control of himself while accessing his assault mode. And unlike Meliodas, who had only darkness to worry about taming, Asta has 3 aspects of his magic in order to worry about. So Asta's mind would slowly be able to be losing control of his magic, as Asta would slowly begin to lose his consciousness, beginning to fall into an almost beast-like state, using his magic and just ripping up the terrain. At this point, Licht would be bloody and beaten, and Valtos would now be trying to escape. as Valtos and Licht barely are able to leave in time, with Asta shooting a powerful beam of darkness and light energy towards them just as they're leaving, ripping up the entire land, almost creating a canyon, a valley, behind where they had just been. Asta would now be in an enraged state, as Yami would arrive. The moment Yami steps out of the portal, he would not sense any magic power, but he would feel an intense pressure. All of his ki, all of his bodily senses were telling him one thing: to run. Yami would wonder where this guy was that Asta was fighting before he realizes that he ran away, seeing Asta now, with drool now coming from his teeth, as his teeth had now elongated into almost fangs on half of his face. And now each side of his body was contorting, as the light and dark energy were now beginning to expand, now with Asta heading closer and closer towards 100% of his power. Yami would have to shut down Asta, as he would need Finral's help. Asta would turn around, his golden eye locking with Yami's, as his pupils would then thin towards Yami. He'd be mumbling as he says, "Die." He turns around with a slash, ripping through the air, cutting with lost vein. In this mad-like state, it was much easier for Yami to read his moves, but that doesn't mean that he could physically keep up with them, as he dodges out of the way just in time as the slash would cut another slice through the earth, as the clouds above would actually have been cut in half from the strike. I can't get hit once by that attack, Yami would be thinking. If I get one touch off of him, then I might die. Yami would laugh, saying this is going to be a challenge. Yami would then tell Asta, "I guess you're trying to get into a rebellious phase now, huh? Well, I guess it's time for me to act like a captain. I'm going to show you the power of a true magic knight captain," Yami would say. Yami would reveal his katana, his blade now shining in the moonlight, and his stars would be twinkling overhead. Asta's power would be creating a pressure, almost like increasing the gravity around the entire area. Asta would suddenly hold up his left hand as he would use Arc. Suddenly a blast of light magic would attack Yami, as Yami would quickly use Dark Lightless Slash, cutting the light magic, defending himself against it. Asta would now begin to growl as he rushed towards Yami in his beast-like state, with assault mode having taken over his mind now. Yami would charge forward too, charging dark magic into his blade and using reinforcement magic as he locks blows with Asta, feeling his arms go numb. Thousands of miles away from the Clover Kingdom, we would see a man with golden hair and a purple mark of the Demon King over his head, smiling and laughing, with Dante as well as the other Dark Triad turning towards their Lord Meliodas, asking what's wrong. Meliodas would say nothing, that he's just amused right now, as Meliodas could sense the demonic energy flooding over the Clover Kingdom. Yami and Asta be fighting until dawn, with Yami barely able to keep up using Ki, and Asta now beginning to slowly slow down, wearing through his stamina as he's throwing full power attacks at every chance he can get, having already destroyed the entire mountainside, making it look like a crater had hit there from a meteor. Yami had gashes and burns all over his body from the light and dark magic, and as Asta was about to throw the final blow, cutting down with his sword on Yami, Yami would not have time to defend as he holds up the katana with the last of his strength, before Asta closes his eyes and passes out to the ground, his hair color returning back to normal as his eyes would recede back to their normal green color, as he falls to the ground unconscious. Yami would fall to his knees, gasping and breathing heavily, as he had never had such a battle that had lasted so long, that had been so hard fought, and he hadn't even won. If he had been fighting that guy from earlier, I might have lost, Yami would say. As Asta would now be unconscious, Yami would then tell Finral after recovering a bit, saying that Asta must be unable to use 100% of his power without going insane like that. Yami would then chuckle, saying he guesses Asta is still kind of a weirdo, just like the rest of the Black Bulls. Asta had been taken to the royal capital where Marx had been healing him, as Yami as well as Finral would be waiting, also getting treated, with Finral having gone there as soon as he could using his magic after having evacuated all the children and citizens that had been sitting near the cave where the battle between Yami, Asta, and Asta versus Licht had been. Speaking of which, actually, looked to be in bad shape, as he would already be getting healing treated from the other members of the Eye of the Midnight Sun. Who could have damaged Licht so much? He could have died, they'd all be thinking, worrying about their leader. Looked to be saying that this is why they can't trust the Clover Kingdom. They never could, and they'll never forgive them. We're going to destroy that kingdom and rebuild our own, he would say, with the other members of the Eye of the Midnight Sun all agreeing and nodding, saying that they need to figure out who had done this, asking if the Wizard King had happened to be where he had been attacking. Licht would laugh, saying no, that it was just some brat. So, a kid? A kid did this much to you, Licht? That's no ordinary kid. He has he would begin explaining about the 5-leaf clover grimoire, as well as this strange power he has. His magic must have been insane. It was so high I couldn't even feel it, he would say. But it was like this pressure was covering my entire body. The entire cave felt dark. I couldn't even penetrate that darkness of my light magic, he'd say, looking down at his shaking hands. It reminded me of that day. We would see burning, as we see a demon. Meanwhile, back at the Clover capital, Asta would be getting healed by Marks, as I'd said earlier, as well as his memories would be getting read. Everything would be going smoothly as the fight with Lux was about to start, before suddenly the memory would begin to start turning in a weird way, as half of the vision would begin to turn bright white, and the other half pitch dark, as the memory would then slowly fade out from both colors, just returning to a blank red. That's weird, Marks would say. He actually lost consciousness while fighting. He would then explain to Yami what happened, saying that Asta's memories cut off just before his actual fight, but he could tell that Licht had been using light magic on Ghosh and the others who had been in the cave, saying that whoever this Licht guy was as he had introduced himself, he was incredibly strong, and he was also probably the leader of the Eye of the Midnight Sun. If Yami hadn't gotten there, Asta would still probably have been rampaging and destroying towns, which would have been really bad for the reputation of the Knights, with, well, I guess the Black Bull's reputation already being that bad, Marks would say, chuckling. Yami would laugh as well, saying they are the misfits of the Magic Knights after all, as he looked over to Asta, still passed out. I'll tell you though, Marks, his power was insane. If you can actually get a handle on that, he might actually be able to become the Wizard King. Not just that too, Yami would say, but his healing, it's ridiculous. Yami would have a quick memory of when he had used his dark lightless slash on the angelic side of Asta's body, as he had cut his arm off. Yami would be worried as he had said whoops, and immediately after he would say that, suddenly a dark energy would begin pulsating over the arm, and it would return back, connecting itself back to Asta's body, before it began healing itself with light recovery magic. Gee, that's creepy, Yami would say, before we now are back to the present. Yami would say that Asta's all healed up and patched up, so they're going to head back to the Black Bull's base. If Julius has anything he needs from us, then tell him to send word. Also, feel free to tell Julius everything that happened with the battle against the Eye of the Midnight Sun. I'm thinking that guy might have left a trap for Fringolion. There's no way that the king of pup-stuck noses like him would get caught by someone as weak as this guy. Especially if a rookie magic knight like Asta could beat him, Yami would say, laughing. Marks would nod, agreeing, saying that he probably was the one to take down Fringolion, as he would then let Julius know. Yami would nod as Finral himself, Ghosh, and everyone who had been at the Black Bulls, including Noelle, who had been incredibly worried about Asta after hearing about his condition, would head back to the base. A few days later, we would see the entire Black Bulls group having fun at Rack on the beach, with Asta in his swim trunks running across the beach and swinging the seashore, with Noelle walking out and asking Asta what he thinks about her swimsuit. Asta would be seemingly oblivious as he's laughing, saying that this is really fun, swimming through the water and moving at breakneck speeds, with Finral relaxing on the beach and trying to pick up girls, and the rest of the Black Bulls members all doing their own thing. Noah would blast water at Asta, telling him that he's stupid sta. A while later, Yami would finally arrive, reminding the rest of the members that they're actually there on a mission that had been shortly assigned to them after the attack that the Eye of the Midnight Sun had done earlier to those kids in Narn. Yami would bury Asta, Noelle, and the other members in the sand up to their head, as they would all apologize to the captain, with Yami laughing, telling Noelle about the plan, that she's the only one who can actually get them to the temple. Noah would gulp, asking what he means, before he'd explain that he had learned that the temple is actually at the very bottom of the sea, through a strong mana zone, and not all of us are crazy monsters who can hold our breath for hours at a time, as he then punched Asta in the head, as Asta would say, "Hey, what was that for, Captain?" With now Asta pouting a bit. Noah would hold back a giggle before she then remembers that she actually has to be the one to save them, and that she's going to have to surpass her limits in order to get them all to the temple. Later that night, Noelle would be training. She's using her water magic and trying her best controlling it, trying to create the sea dragon's nest. She's trying to work on forming the ball of water that can protect them as they go underneath the sea. Later that night, while she is controlling it and thinking about how she has to get better, she would hear a noise, and that's when she would find Asta training and running around. She would then talk to Asta, asking if he'd be willing to train with her, and Asta would agree, and so they decided to help each other out. Eventually, while they were training, Asta would notice that someone would be singing, and both he and Noah would then find someone, which would be this girl just singing on top of a rock into the moonlight. The girl would then notice Asta and Noelle and would introduce herself, Noelle would then both introduce herself and Asta before asking Kahono, who is the girl, as she had introduced herself as. Kahono would then reply to her that she's practicing her singing and that she had actually wanted to be an idol. She noticed that Asta is injured and would heal him with some of her song magic. She would then ask if the two of them be interested in being their friends, so the three of them would then become friends, with them agreeing. Kahono would then tell Noelle to not suppress her magic too much, or she'll lose control of it. Kahono tells her that using a good memory to obtain a peace of mind works best, but Noelle can only really think about how her family looks down on her and her failures from the past. Noelle would continue training and is helped by both Asta and Kahono, with Asta being a good training partner and Kahono just being good at teaching and explaining how to control magic more efficiently. This would continue for the next few days, and it eventually become the night of the full moon. Noelle has not been able to completely gain control over her power, and Asta would then tell her as he grabs her shoulders, telling her to stop thinking and just use all of her mana. Noelle tells him as she's worried, looking down at the ground, that she's hoping, but she doesn't think it's going to go right. Asta would say that he will, and that if anything goes wrong, then he'll just stop her and save all of them, going back to the surface. Noelle would agree, as she would then release all of her mana, and is going to fall unconscious when she would hear the Black Bulls cheering her on. Noelle would think of how the Black Bulls had taken her in, acknowledged her, and were supporting her from the very beginning, trying to push her beyond her limits. And as she does so, she would then finally gain control of her Sea Dragon's cradle. I'm doing it, Noelle would be thinking, as she would then suddenly, in her excitement, release the control of the spell, and she would then fall out of the water bubble, directly down as Asta would catch her. She would then blush as he tells her to him to put her down, as Asta would do so, then grabbing the behind of his head and saying that Noelle did a really good job, saying that now they can actually get to the temple and find that stone that they were looking for. Noelle would then look around for Kahono, but she was gone. And she would then think, as we see Kahono walking away, that she's looking forward to meeting Noelle down at the temple below. As both Noelle and Asta would gather the rest of the Black Bulls, the entire team would then head down into the ocean, with Noelle creating the spell. After a while, the group would eventually make it to the Great Magic Zone, underneath the sea. With both Yami and Asta cheering her on, Noelle would be able to somehow get through the rough currents and finally see something beautiful, as they see the temple about to approach them. Suddenly, a whirlpool of mana would come swirling towards them, as Yami would pick up and throw Asta at it, who would destroy the whirlpool using full counter on the magic, as it gets sent flying back into the ocean. As the entire group then lands into the seabed temple, the Black Bulls would then look around at this ancient civilization, as they begin their search to try and find the magic stone that Julius had sent them to look for. If you guys want to see the next part of What If Asta was Meliodas' son, make sure to slap the like button, comment down below what you thought, and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this from me. I'll see all of you guys in the next one. Goodbye.